Hi, I'm Angela Liao, and today I'm very excited to speak with Ed Lin. Ed is the author of two novels, Waylaid and This Is a Bust. Roy Olson from Booklist said that Waylaid was a brilliant debut, and of This Is a Bust, he said that it was rich, flavorful, and humane. Today we're here in Chinatown where This Is a Bust happens to take place. For those of you who haven't read the book, Ed's going to tell us a little bit about it.
So basically, this book occurs in 1976 in Chinatown. Robert Chow is a Vietnam vet and a Chinese American who grew up in Chinatown. He kind of is given this really tokenish kind of role in the police department, in which he kind of just walks this kindly kind of beat, and he's the face of the NYPD at various community functions. So he's feeling very disgruntled and just kind of wallowing in self-loathing a little bit. But then there's a woman who may have been murdered in the book, and this is sort of a galvanizing force for him. The indifference that he feels from his superiors towards this woman's death kind of motivates him to sort of help fix himself and sort of help out Chinatown. This Is a Bust takes place in 1976. 1976 is a very interesting year for Chinese America because Zhou Enlai has died, Mao is on his deathbed, Chiang Kai-shek has already been dead for more than a year, and it kind of seems like there could be a sort of like turnover in terms of like whatever powers exercise political influence in Chinatowns around the world. Because at the time, without question, the KMT sort of held sway in Chinatowns, but that could have changed in 1976, especially with a guy like Jimmy Carter coming up for election. Well, the book, it opens with Robert getting his haircut, or waiting to get his haircut in a barbershop. There's a barbershop that I get my haircut in on Doyer Street. And it's one of the few places in Chinatown where Mandarin is kind of the primary language. But when I go there, I always speak English. I don't want to get into Mandarin because mine is just terrible and would end like horrifically after like two sentences, any conversation. So I went in there once, I was getting my hair cut, and this woman cutting my hair said, "Oh my God, what's wrong with this guy? This isn't Chinese hair, this is too curly." And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh my God, I'm so alienated from these people, right? How could I be any more alienated? And I was like, wait a second, a cop, a Chinese American cop would totally be seen as like a foreigner here.
And in terms of recreating that world of 1976 Chinatown, how did you go about researching and really bring to life that world? Because I read it and I loved the fact that it felt like I was stepping back in time.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Well, for one thing, if you're doing some time traveling, the last thing you can trust is the internet, because you don't rightly know if something is dated from 1976, if it's the actual thing. So what I did was I went on eBay. I got a lot of old magazines and newspapers from 1976. I read through them. I interviewed quite a few people who were here in the 70s, in particular, two retired cops who have been great and wonderful. So lots of interviews, lots of reading, and lots of imagination. This one guy that I spoke with, he wasn't, he didn't claim to be a hardcore gang member. He was more like an associate in the 80s. But when I was talking to him, he said he was completely out of it. So I talked with him quite a bit. And I remember one time I was with one of the retired cops who was one of my sources, and we were walking through Chinatown. And we came upon this former gang associate. And the cop was like, wait a second, don't I know you from somewhere? for many years, there's almost kind of like a predatory sort of business practice in Chinatown where waiters get their tips stolen by management.
Oh, wow.
They're regularly underpaid, regularly forced to work overtime. We've been hearing more about this only because people are more forthright about coming out and like saying, you know, hey, I'm getting ripped off. There have been a number of organizations that have been helping this sort of condition, like Chinese Staff and Workers Association. There's also national mobilization against sweatshops that has been helpful too. But in the 70s, I'm sure this was happening. This has been happening for decades. And in particular, I was drawing on my own experience of showing up at some of these protests at infamous places on the Bowery that, you know, were basically stealing waiters' tips. And then when the Attorney General became involved, the restaurant closed down. And so these waiters not only did get all their back pay, but they also lost their jobs.
You mentioned that as a kid you used to come to Chinatown. Do you see a lot of changes these days when you walk around?
Well, Chinatown is always in a state of flux, and there's always different immigration patterns that kind of change things a lot. It's interesting that the Fukienese community is so huge in Chinatown now, and because the Fukienese community is basically more aligned with the People's Republic than with Taiwan and the KMT, which is kind of the traditional power base in Chinatown. So it's almost like in Manhattan's Chinatown, there are two Chinatowns. Once you cross the Bowery, you're kind of like in the People's Republic, and to the west, it's more of a KMT-dominated Cantonese people sort of thing going on. Apart from that, there's a lot of gentrification happening in Chinatown.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this building here is a very nice condo, renovated condo now, and you know, 100 years ago it was probably a collapsing tenement.
Were there any particular places that you used to go to that are not around anymore that you miss?
Actually, you know what? There was a toy store. There was a toy store on Mott Street. It's gone now. But I used to get like hockey cards there. A couple of places where I used to get video games are gone now. I used to get comic books on this place I think it was close to White Street, but you know that's gone now too. You know, but hey, you know they didn't have hand-pulled noodles back then, and there's a couple of places now. You know, I will gladly take that exchange. There used to be a pretty big chain of bakeries in Chinatown called Maria's, but they're all gone now. But still, there's no shortage of bakeries. One thing that Robert Chow, this is where I differ from Robert Chow. Robert Chow really enjoys eating the hot dog pastries. I used to when I was younger, but I've kind of lost my taste for them. I think it's because I like better quality dogs now, but he picks up an iced coffee and one of these hot dog buns pretty much every day. And you know, you can't live long on a diet like that.
Yeah, a lot of sodium.
I find myself, you know, I'm definitely more geared towards like the coconut filling buns now because they are special. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, the toy store, is it related to the toy store in your book? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Did you picture it when you wrote it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. In general, has the feedback been pretty positive to your book?
Oh, definitely. At first, you know, I was thinking that I would have to go to an agent again, you know, even though after I had the first book published, I thought, okay, now's the time to find an agent and, you know, have a major house publish this thing. But what I found was that couldn't really find a good fit in terms of like finding an agent who like loved it, finding editors who loved it too. So I actually sent it to Kaya. Kaya is the independent Asian American nonprofit press that published my first book, Waylaid. And I showed it to Sun Young, who's the editor there, and she's like, you know what? I love this book. And I was like, wow, that's great.
Right.
So, you know, she's the first person who said she loved it. So I was like, okay, let's do this. A sequel is coming out. I have a sequel coming out, in the winter of 2010, so that's January, February, about a year from now. And it's being published by Thomas Dunn / St. Martin / Minotaur. It's also my first publication in hardcover.
Wow, very exciting.
Yeah.
And where can we find these books?
Well, these books, I think you should definitely support your local bookseller, your local independent bookseller, because without them, I wouldn't be able to go on book tours and do readings. Failing that, you know, there always is Amazon. There's also Barnes & Noble and Borders, who should have my book in stock.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ed. It was
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
Angela.
So thanks for joining us.